Hello, and if you're wondering what the heck that was about, I will be explaining in the presentation. It's the modular water systems trucking another system out, but I will be telling you the details of this. Don't worry if you couldn't see the type, all will be explained. All right, so welcome to the show, Thursday, March 21st, and briefing number 254, Save the Planet, Recycle Water. Why do we say save the planet, recycle water? Because this is the logical end result of what we do. You cannot recycle water in an antiquated infrastructure grid, which is what we have in the US, without taking it off the grid. So once businesses do their own water treatment, then they can recycle. Now, that doesn't mean they all do recycle, but once they are independent, then they have a strong incentive to do so as water rates continue to go up. So without that, they cannot. They're at the mercy of the infrastructure. We'll be talking about that further because it's our theme for World Water Day. All right. So with that, the usual disclaimers, and let's jump right in to the news. Well, commercial real estate in a garage sale, we have a problem here with a 70% discount. And personally, I believe these people are lucky because we are now seeing owners just walk away from their entire debt and let the bank deal with it. And that it is a meltdown. And we could have predicted it. If you didn't realize that when you stopped showing up for work yourself during COVID, then you probably deserved it. Now, what's going to happen? Well, by the way, if hotels were doing well, which they're not, but that's another story, they could be doing hotel conversions of these. But the problem is people are not coming to the big cities. San Francisco, people used to routinely come to San Francisco once a week from Utah. That's gone. That's over, especially with the plane fares. I mean, it costs thousands of dollars to travel anywhere right now. And so it has become a virtual world. We sit at home. That's 90% of what we do these days. All right. And of course, upper middle class families in America, or what used to be upper middle class, which were working doctor, lawyer, etc. Nice home, prime metro, raised 2.5 kids, and his wife stayed home. He worked 40 to 50 hours a week. Well, the same person now works 50 to 70-hour weeks. His wife works as well. Don't have time or money for kids, frankly. And so these upper middle class people are now solidly middle class, if not lower middle class. And this is what Gen X means, a decline. Either you work all the time, both of you, to try and capture that, or just fall behind in downward mobility. And so you'll have a life, but you'll be poor, shall we say. And I think you all are experiencing that. Let's see what this little clip has to say. I was in California until 2020, and we were talking, take shorter showers and so forth. Well, if you're only 10% of the demand, that's not going to move the needle. What's going to move the needle is what you do with industry and agriculture. What I was predicting then would happen has since happened, which is a movement towards businesses treating their own dirty water. Why? It's cheaper. They can recycle their water, saving even more money. And thirdly, for a lot of you entrepreneurs, is you're not stuck with the politics of the local water utility. You're on your own. It's great. So a lot of businesses like it, and so it's become a thing. So if you're going to do your own water treatment, you don't have a spare $1 million, don't worry about it. Just sign here and we'll give it to you as a service. And that's the latest thing. So we are firmly in the water as a service space for this new decentralized thing. We are extremely happy with where we are, and we are literally in the tornado as we're discovering right now. All right, we're going to continue here. Again, I don't get into all these text ones. That's why you want to follow Exec and get all that good stuff. Now, by the way, not everyone's getting poorer. In fact, the number of folks with $1 million or more saved in their 401k jumped 20%. Why? Well, half of them are boomers. And another half are Gen X millionaires. Millennials are less than 1%. They are the ones that are left behind. A Gen Zer, their average 401k balance is $7,100. That will not get you anywhere. All right. So with that, James Wright says, greetings. I hope all is well. Thanks for all the great work and news. Thank you, sir. All right. Continuing here. Again, lots of good stuff. Now, this was a huge story that I picked up on weather.com, actually. Let's see what that story says. There's a couple issues that are obvious in this story. First of all, 2/3 of Chicago kids under 6 exposed to lead. And this is a problem that the amount of money required to replace those pipes is god awful. God awful. It's basically not happening. We have to isolate the water coolers, the faucets, everything, and just make them, filter out the heavy metals and all the other terrible stuff. That, again, requires budgets. And it's not happening right now. So we have a big problem. Now, EPA is requiring the cities to deal with the Teflons, which is PFAS, and the lead. And in fact, there's budget to deal with lead. But it's only on top of all the other challenges that the cities have. So it's a very difficult situation. This is why it is so critical that we've got to come to the rescue of the cities and actually unburden them from all that industrial and agricultural work. Believe me, they do not want it. Here's another one. I'm not going to play it, but U.S. warns of cyber attacks against water systems throughout the nation. Now, what do we say? This is why we must adopt water decentralization. I was around in the 80s when internet was just beginning, and it was evolving out of the military and the university network. And the key reason for the internet being the way it was so that it would be all spread out and not be vulnerable to nuclear attack. This is exactly why you want to have water decentralization as well. You don't want to have highly centralized systems being at the mercy of cyber attacks. Let alone what we used to fear in the 60s, which was LSD in the reservoirs. All right. And then let's see. Oh, okay. Paul Fetcher, today NYC set out notices to over 2,000 water users. Their arrears total over $120 million. Pay or we're cutting off your water, NYC mayor. Well, the problem is he, unfortunately, really can't. How do you do that? He's in a tough place. And it's getting tougher. But this is the problem. Water bills have risen so much that now we have wide-scale defaults, and nobody knows what to do about it. So, Paul, you've illustrated a real big problem with the utilities. All right. And David and Dorothy Shearer. Hi, Jimmy. Great to be part of the family. And Berenger has welcomed you guys. And your spot on praise. Okay, thank you, Timothy. All right, continuing here. Home buyers now need 80% more income to purchase a home than they did just 4 years ago. Oh, by the way, this inflation is under control. 80%. Median income has only risen 23% in that time. The real estate market, whether in good or bad times, it cycles. People are buying and selling. They're moving to different cities and so forth. That is grinding to a halt. People can't afford to get rid of their existing place, which has a low mortgage. And so they're stuck, right? That's how it is. All right. We have a story. A few weeks ago, I showed you a new article in Water Online that said, whoa, decentralization is the thing, 2024. And I pointed out in that briefing to an article I wrote in 2016 that literally said exactly the same thing 8 years ago, and with much more detail. Of course, back then we were considered nuts, but we paid off on that with a full implementation of decentralized water. Now it's become a thing. There's a new unicorn called Gradient that services the biggest pharma and so forth, food and beverage. For example, PepsiCo has committed to 80% recycling of their processed water. That means decentralized water. So now it's become a thing, and it's being done, and CNN is writing about it and so forth. And we are right there, positioned perfectly. It felt very lonely in the beginning, but we persisted, built progressive water, modular water systems. And then starting in 2020, Ken and I started working on this crazy idea of companies not paying for their own water treatment upfront as capital, but paying it as they went. Now, that is not a brand new concept. In the industry, it's called design, build, own, operate, DBOO, water as a service. It's been around for a while, for at least a quarter century. But here's the thing. No regular investors have had access to it. So our special sauce is that we do this water as a service, and we created an investable asset for regular investors. Okay, well, you say, well, Riggs, yeah, that's accredited investors. It's the 1%, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get that, which is why we are on the verge of launching our Regulation A offering again. OriginClear is going to offer a Regulation A offering to build the funds that it will eventually provide. Well, first of all, the expenses of developing all this, but also the funds that it plans to provide to water on demand in the future. This will give everyone an opportunity who's not accredited to invest. Stand by for that. Really, a couple of years ago, gosh, it was a bit more than a couple of years ago, back in 2021, we started showing these skyrocketing graphs, inflation graphs, and nobody really believed it. But it is accelerating, and businesses want to mitigate their risk, right? They want to get out of an inflationary spiral with whatever it is. And one excellent way to do it is to take water under their control, which is one of the hyperinflationary costs out there, and be able to manage that. And that's what this is all about. Water is a monopoly, so how can you get involved? Well, I think this guy's got a couple ideas. There's been a problem with investing in water because it's been a monopoly. Water utilities, they're the source of the water. And by the way, we're not talking about changing that. The water should still come from the utilities, because every attempt to privatize fresh water has been a disaster. But I'm talking about treating the dirty water, and that has been a monopoly. And so you could either invest in American Water Works, Veolia, Suez, et cetera. Okay, but they just grow the way S&Ps grow. Fine. You can invest in an ETF. Fine. But if you want to make an asset investment, that's been lacking. When I told you that we're creating water as a service and people don't have to pay for their machine, well, then who does? And so we created an investment vehicle very similar to oil and well, called master limited partnerships in the gas and oil space. It pays dividends just like that, and there's equity rewards, ownership of the parent company, ownership of this new company called Water on Demand. And what's great is you can place a lien on the equipment to enforce your royalties, because the ownership is not handed over to the end user. We continue to own it, and they pay by the gallon. So that is obviously our mantra. It's what we talk about. I mean, here, what makes us different? Water as a service does exist. In fact, water as a service is a trademark owned by a company that does big desalination projects for islands. And so how are we special? Well, we're the only ones that regular investors can access. That is our superpower. All right, coming closer to the present, we have, in fact, today, and this was, I was telling you about hotels. Well, hotels have a big problem because people are not, like San Francisco has got a bad rep. There's literally a map out there of all the places where there's poop on the San Francisco Bay Area, Peninsula. And that word has gotten out there. It is not a clean and well-managed place. The New York City, which Giuliani cleaned up tremendously well, Times Square used to be all seedy and stuff like that, and it was cleaned up beautifully. They had roving squads of police cars making sure that the place was safe. That's all gone. And the buzz is that, yes, you'll get international tourists, but a lot of US tourists and internal tourism is way down. The problem with Four Seasons is this particular Four Seasons is that they were barely going to make their money even with full occupancy. Yeah, I used to hear about people traveling to SF almost once per week from Utah. Haven't much post COVID. And here's what I was. How do you even recover $860,000 per room? That's 7 years at high occupancy to break even. So this was an overheated and overinvested space, and then COVID just dealt it a death blow. So you're going to see a lot of this going on. Now, I believe that there is going to be wholesale bailouts occurring. This will not be allowed to stand for much longer because it is going to turn into a tsunami. But we shall see, won't we? Speaking of tsunami, well, I'll get to that in a second, but first I wanted to cover the fact that inflation is not tamed. It's still and of course, this is the fake inflation number. We know from shadow stats that it's far higher, but let's just assume that this is, the real number. They're trying to get down to 2%, and it's proving incredibly hard. And the savage interest rates are continuing to be charged. And so the Fed is literally squeezing the chicken, the neck of the chicken, and trying to get it to go down, but it's of course killing the chicken. And that, unfortunately, it's not going to have. Now, here's a suggestion that the Fed could raise their inflation target to 3%. Maybe they will because it is an election year. We shall see. All right, tsunami. Well, right now, Mike Rowe has an article where he talks about how America is not training skilled trades. And, liberal arts education is on my phone. The only reason you go to a liberal arts college, frankly, is to act like a college guy, you know what I'm saying? And also to network. And here's the thing. It says right here, we've got close to 10 million open jobs. We've got $1.7 trillion in student loans. We're still sending out the same message. So he's pushing a trade resource centers. And if you are electric, plumbing, air conditioning, heating, you can basically work anywhere in this country right now. This, by the way, was providing a lot of the work for undocumented workers. And that is that if your households and small businesses don't ask for your papers, they just call you a contractor, and that's the end of that. Well, let's just talk about our industry. The water industry, which is mostly centralized still, is in the middle of what's called a silver tsunami, people retiring. 7 million jobs short. And this is leading to huge opportunities. Now, would you go to work at the city, or would you work at a water company servicing businesses that are starting to adopt their own water treatment and also servicing the city under contract? Believe me, it's a better way to go. And that brings us to the end of the Twitter excerpts, which I hope you've enjoyed. Let's get on with other interesting stuff. Jeff, what do they pay per gallon on water service? I'm going to tell you the first pilot project and how it's structured and so forth, but just to tell you, this is a competitive offering for business. Compelling. That I can tell you that right now. Now, I showed you a clip at the beginning that was pretty mysterious. I'm going to replay it quickly, and then I'll tell you what this is all about. Okay, so Avera Treat, that's our in-ground system. It's containerized, as you can see, but some people don't want these things to be sitting on a pad above ground. For aesthetic or space utilization needs and so forth, they'll put it underground, or also just for aesthetic reasons, right? So this KOA campground in Arizona is getting an EVT, Avera Treat, 5K, 5,000 gallons per day, IFAS, integrated fixed film activated sludge, which I'll tell you about, treatment system being shipped out. And so this KOA is processing human waste. Now, IFAS basically, there's two major treatment systems out there that are very good. One is membrane bioreactors, where basically the entire tub has bacteria like a stomach and it treats the whole thing. Whereas the IFAS is basically a biofilm that the bacteria sits on. And there's still bacteria in the tub as well. It's perhaps more efficient, a little bit more expensive. It has mostly space benefits. You get a lot of value for the amount of space available. So that's IFAS. We do that a lot. So literally being shipped out, the team at Modular Water Systems is ranking. They are selling a lot of these underground systems, Treat, the above ground systems, Skid, and a lot of pump stations, Mod. So you'll be hearing much more about the progress they're making. And with that, I also want to let you know that we have a date and time for the LD Micro Internet Invitational, 14th Invitational in New York City. Both Ken and I will be there on the 8th of April at 1:30 p.m. Now, normally companies go to these things to present to investors. We are not interested in the kind of investors that are at LD Micro right now. So why are we there? Well, because it is a fantastic environment to shoot a lot of good material and to present the new presentation. I mean, basically, AJ is going to get a whole lot of good material out of this. And we hope to also have some good content from our good man, Kevin Harrington. More on this topic. All right. Now, World Water Day is tomorrow. So what's going on? Well, World Water Day this year is all about, global sustainability. Well, we focus in on one thing, which is water recycling. Why? Because less than 1% of our water is being recycled, and more shortages coming, and nearly 90% of our freshwater use goes to industry and agriculture. And at the same time, we only recycle 1%. So that's not appropriate. How do we, now the problem is, of course, is that it's impossible, not possible for the central infrastructure to do any recycling. It will not happen in this century if we let it happen at the central. Now, there are efforts going on. Granted, there's efforts going on by municipalities to reuse water, primarily groundwater, recharging, and also you see those signs along the freeway, not potable. Well, that comes from the city. Treated water, but not drinkable. But in general, by volume, it is very, very poor, and it's not going to get better because the utilities are already overwhelmed with trying to meet regulatory requirements, growth, growth of business and agriculture demand, more people, etc. The key is simple: let businesses do their water treatment at the source of contamination. So that's really our point. Now, PepsiCo is a leader in this space. They're aiming for 100%, or actually better, net positive. They're aiming for a positive ratio, more water going out than coming in, which sounds strange, except of course they've got a lot of product that has water in it, that they're, fruits, etc. So they're special, but still that they've committed to 80% is huge. And what are some of the concepts? Okay, sustainable water management, the idea of circular water systems, which use innovative methods to recover and reuse water. And that's what PepsiCo is invested in, for example. And global consumption of fresh water has skyrocketed, and a lot of unsustainable burden, less than 1% is being recycled. And that's a wake-up call. Now, we've calculated that achieving even a 15% recycling rate in industrial and agricultural could double the amount of fresh water available. So it is a scalable solution. It is not going to require billions and trillions. We simply get a better deal for these businesses. They migrate, things get better. It's very simple. And in conclusion, recycling is no longer optional. It is essential by enabling industry and agriculture, which together account for, again, 90% of all freshwater use, to handle their own water treatment. We empower them to use their water more than once, saving them money and increasing the amount of water available to all. So that's the story there. I was very honored to be asked to come back on the Hrvoje Moric show on TNT Radio Live. He's been running that show for over 3 years, literally daily. He's actually not doing that show anymore. He's retiring from it and focusing on his. I'm looking over here at his Telegram channel called Geopolitics, Politics and Empire. Geopolitics and Empire on Telegram. I strongly recommend. He's got amazing guests on his own personal Telegram channel. Just listen to what we have to say together for a few minutes, and I think you'll like it. So here I was on TNT Radio, and TNT Radio is now video as well as radio, so we're privileged, aren't we? Here we go.
Well, what's unique about this, public companies don't do this, right? They tend to be very closed-mouthed. We instead, we try and tell it like it is.
This is the Hrvoje Moric Show on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
All right, returning to the program is Riggs Eckelberry, who's a nationally renowned entrepreneur dedicated to revolutionizing the water industry, which we can see is reaching a critical breaking point. He's the founding CEO of OriginClear. The website is OriginClear.com. Welcome back to TNT, Riggs.
You're looking good, Hrvoje.
I was in Acapulco for a week, so maybe that helped.
That's it. It always helps.
and I'm hydrating with water, right? So you too. So we had a chat in the past on TNT and on my podcast, and a lot of fascinating stuff when it comes to water, where things are going, the problem situation, investment opportunities on the water, and maybe to start, what's new in water world?
Well, I assume that you mean my part of the water world. Well, that we actually successfully packaged up an acquisition by a SPAC, and that acquisition is going, we think, onto the NASDAQ because we actually filed our S4, which is the official registration, and now we're being poured over by the SEC. But essentially, we took everything that we had developed, 3 operating divisions, and combined them and achieved a value sufficient that we believe the new combination is going to be a really good NASDAQ company. And that's something we really need because, as you recall, we've created a capital approach to enable regular investors to put their money into something like an oil and gas fund, but it's water.
And, it's interesting. What came to mind right now since our last conversation, I think it was over a half a year ago. And, we can see the progress. As you just mentioned, you were saying, back then, these are our plans where we want to go. And you're getting there. And that's really good signs. And, before looking at some of that stuff, I always like to start with the problems first. And, just the headline that came across today related to water. And here in Mexico City, I'll be visiting Mexico City soon. It said, I think it was today, CBS, one of the world's most populated cities is nearly out of water, as many go days, if not weeks, without it. And they're warning now that Mexico City could be on the verge of a day zero, where it will no longer have enough water to provide residents. That would really stink, wouldn't it?
The main problem we have in the world with water is not really water scarcity, it's water stewardship, right? It's how do we manage it? Let's take a few years ago, Cape Town had a day zero, and they solved it. They just took the water away from the farmers, and everybody was fine. So the problem really is that we don't think there should be a winner-loser kind of situation as they saw in Cape Town. What we should be seeing is good water equity, and that relies on infrastructure. So Mexico is a perfect example because it's a booming country. It's doing incredibly well. It's got a great workforce. It's benefiting from all that reshoring trend that we're seeing as deglobalization really kicks in. And we're going to see a lot more of that. But the infrastructure has been badly neglected. good friend of mine in the water trade in Puebla tells me that the river Zateca, I think it is, runs rainbow. It is very nasty, and the reason is that well, his business is of course treating water, but his only customers are the Anglos, the companies that have U.S. ownership, and thus they have their own governance policies, and so they treat the water. Unfortunately, there's very lax enforcement or none really of water policies for companies otherwise, and that's a problem. And now we're seeing it happen clearly in Mexico City, but we're going to see it happen elsewhere. One of the big problems we have here in the U.S., of course, is we don't recycle. We have this very, you know, water, there's plenty of it. And literally, we're in the middle of a drought, and we're like, still not recycling the water. It's pretty astonishing. In fact, we've really focused in hard on the recycling problem because the world's leader, Israel, recycles almost 90% of their water. The number two in the world, the last I heard, was Spain at 20%, US 1%. Now, it's not because the US doesn't want to recycle, it's because it was built that way. And too often, when grids are built a certain way, it's very hard to change them. We saw that with the energy grid, with the phone grid. In a way, the earlier you do something, the more you're locked into old technology, whereas Africa, for example, adopted cell phones without any burden of landlines. They just went ahead and did it. Here's the good news. Mexico, India, and even America, which all have infrastructure problems from going from none to bad, are potentially saved by this idea of treat in place. If we enable businesses, remember that 90% of all water demand is by industry and agriculture, right? So if we enable businesses to do their own water treatment and recycle, then they do great. They actually save money, big time. And we actually build, you might say, distributed architecture, and we don't have to figure out how to raise $100 billion that's not there. And the second big problem with central infrastructure, of course, is time. Decades to build the central infrastructure. And meanwhile, as you say, Mexico is getting to day zero.
Yeah, for some reason the last Fallout video game you might not be familiar with, but it's a post-apocalyptic scenario, and people come back into these little towns and they have to recreate everything from scratch, and they have to create like these generators, and it just made me kind of think what you guys are developing, decentralized, relatively mobile. It looks like that, and just going back for a moment, I have been reading in newspapers like in Mexico that they're talking kind of about the water issue. So they're like, yeah, we should do something. Do you see governments, because we talked about this before, that the infrastructure is just declining. Do you see anywhere any signs of life of governments, becoming concerned?
I was catching up on your G&E podcast, a channel on Telegram, and it's depressing to see everything that's going on. There's so much mismanagement, a lack of management, and contrary management going on that I don't think we can really rely on governments to move in a sane direction right now. Don't ask me why, but it's kind of topsy-turvy. The solution is local action, and people, instinctively do that. As a result of COVID, they started out migrating to exurbia and rural areas, which paradoxically created a problem because, America has 150,000 water systems, and some of them have as few as 3,000 subscribers. And so now you have people moving in from, Detroit or whatever, and it worsens the problem. It overwhelms these small systems. So the idea is we're moving as fast as we can to make it possible to enable self-treatment. And in fact, we have a major ally who's joining us, and I can say this on your show, but Kevin Harrington is going to begin to work with us, and primarily because he's so urgently concerned about the need to, bring about local responsibility, local recycling. That's the only way it's going to happen. We cannot wait for government action. It's impossible.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, and probably a lot of folks at TNT when it comes to government action. We gotta roll up our sleeves and find solutions from the private sector. OriginClear.com. Is that the best website? And and any other places or that we can find you, or best websites and projects? I know you do a news program every week as well.
Yeah, well, the best place to go is OriginClear.com because, as you said, we do a Thursday night CEO briefing that I think we're up to about 220, 25, or something like that. But what's unique about this, public companies don't do this, right? They tend to be very closed-mouthed. We instead we try and tell it like it is, and in fact, I bring on executives. We do the shouting guys thing. It's kind of funny actually. And it's a great way to keep track, not just of what we're doing, but we make observations about trends in the world and so forth. One of the big factors going on right now, as you know, is I think hyperinflation. Let's just tell it like it is. I just saw the price that the monthly assistance check that the U.S. gives out has tripled or something like that. It's horrendous. So we know that's a fact, and the only refuge for people like you and me, and if we're in the U.S., but you have the same problem, I believe. Mexico's got problems too, I think, perhaps not as bad, hopefully, is assets and its commodities, right? If you can find an investable asset that actually tracks a commodity, then at least you know that people use it and they trade it, and that's what we're trying to do with water. Now, why water? Well, you always want to be in on the beginning of demonopolization. Look what happened with AT&T, right? When it broke up, it created all kinds of organizations, MCI, the Baby Bells, even the internet. Everything got sort of spawned by this blow up that occurred, and very similar. It's kind of like the fall of Rome, isn't it? We could, my really good friend Jeremy Ryan Slade and you have been talking about that stuff. Very interesting. So in a similar way, water is going through this dismonopolization process, and it's creating an opportunity for these investable water assets that we've structured for the regular investor. And I'm also happy to say not just the 1%, but the regular man and woman who's got spare $250 and they can invest in water. And the good news is it's early. And it's also all assets today are manipulated. Don't tell me that the asymptotic rise of Bitcoin is not manipulated. I mean, just saying, right? Now, I'm in Bitcoin. I'm not complaining, right? But at the same time, we know that these things are being played, oil and gas, gold, you name it. But water, not yet anyway. And it's also extremely stable. So we think it's a great way for people to protect their money and also make some money.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When it comes to assets, we see it everywhere. Housing, anywhere you name it. Gold is not really moving so much, but you talked previously about these water stable coins. If you want to, tell us what's going on there. Where has that been going?
Right. Well, we made a conscious decision to not export that into water on demand, and it's a very simple reason. The SEC has, an allergy to anything crypto at the moment. As I told you when we were talking last, our concept was really for a way to deliver these dividends and also to encase someone's entire future revenue stream in a blockchain structure so that they could transfer it easily and so forth. At the most basic level, it's a convenience for the holder. It's a true security coin. We're not making any bones about that. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that's going to get mad amounts of issuances, because in order to have one, think of it as a digital bond. So it's you have to own the underlying property. Now, the reason it's interesting is because today there's no market in water. You really can't trade water. There's a little bit of that going on, with Western water rights and so forth, but it's relatively very, very little. If you're suffering from drought risk in Northern California, you can't offset it with Singapore water. You just can't do it. In the future, as we create water on demand clusters in which every gallon of water is monetized by a payment by an actual counterparty, and then we start replicating this to other financial centers in the world, we will have a kind of a lingua franca, which will be this universal and that's when it's good to have a token, because you don't have issues with cross-border exchanges and so forth. Now, it's very interesting because OriginClear is clearly becoming a serial creator of companies, incubator, call it maybe. What we've done now is we've packaged 3 companies into one, going to the NASDAQ. If all goes well, we'll be a really good holder of a large piece of that. Great. And then the next one is this payment structure, which has a natural client, which is the NASDAQ company. So we're kind of taking it easy, taking it in, sort of playing with captive vehicles. But eventually what we want to do is exercise our superpower, which is working with the everyday retail investor, who we believe is terribly underserved, certainly in the United States.
And that brings us to the moment in the show that you all wait for with bated breath. And with that, I'm going to bring in the gang.
And there's no shouting. I don't know what the shouting reference was.
I know it.
I was about to say the shouting head thing. We are here.
The
I mean, I can start shouting if you like.
there's a show, I forget what it is, where a news show. I don't know if it's still on, but everybody shouts. So that's what had me going about that. But Hrvoje is a very sophisticated interviewer. He knows a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's a good guy. I expect also to be on Geopolitics and Empire, which isn't, you get to be really rad on that. Anybody who was on the Geopolitics and Empire channel on Telegram knows it is interesting. Let's just put it that way. It's interesting.
You get to let your hair down a little.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah. So a couple of observations. So the average master plumber makes the same amount of money as the average attorney in this country. And folks that own if you own an HVAC contracting company in Arizona, you're a multimillionaire. I mean, if you're older than 30, right, you're already a multimillionaire.
The business value, absolutely.
Well, I remember, you remember Mike Mann, the guy that he was identifying companies for us. He had a strategy where he wanted to contact accredited investors. He said, I'm just going to call HVAC contractors. He goes, because so the idea that you have to go to a 4-year degree and go to Columbia and then of course your alien dance theory diploma isn't really that marketable, So, whatever dance theory, right? But it's the dirty jobs kind of thing, dirty jobs kind of attitude. Well, anyway, so my point simply being that a new wave of millionaires can enter the market by becoming skilled and working in the trades. And I think specifically water, only because there's this massive deficit of skilled labor in that field, 7 million jobs. Think about that for a minute. 7 million six-figure jobs. Mm-hmm. 7 million six-figure jobs. So that's really stunning and very impressive. So the lack of jobs in this, what happens is they can charge whatever the hell they want. So these folks are making $300 and $400 an hour when they're coming to your home and install. They installed a new furnace of mine, and they charged me. They were there for 2 hours. They charged me $1,500 for the install. That was just, I go, what's that? He goes, labor. I went, okay. It was February and I didn't have a furnace. So it was whatever you need.
Yeah. Well,
whatever you need.
We had a similar problem where the AC, broke down and they kept coming back to handle some different part on the roof. We're in a condo. And it just, after a while, they stopped charging us for parts, but they weren't stopping for the labor.
No.
And it was like $750 later, well, we got our AC back. I'm like, Jesus.
Right. I'm paying you for your training. Right. You're paying for that, you're paying for the training at that point. Exactly. So lots of exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to micro. That's going to be interesting. And I think really what you describe is a way to create incredible content, but also to craft our vision and our ability to describe our vision to a new audience. These are not our investors, but I think it is a way to create a tremendous degree of virality in how we discuss this and getting that message out and combining it with,
Kevin's piece, but there's 80 companies presenting. There'll be a lot of cross-pollination.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I love about everything that we've been able to accomplish, especially in the past 3 to 4 months, if not the past 6, but really in the past 3 to 4, is creating this constant funnel of content, right? Before you've been doing this show, Riggs, for so so long and have maintained it, which is phenomenal.
I have visibly aged on this show.
Before and after, right? It's like a president when he enters the office and a president when he leaves the office, he's all freaking gray.
Yeah,
so we started this. Listen, AJ, we started this. I remember calling Riggs. I go, why don't we do a weekly conference call? That's how old this is, right? We were going to do it, on a phone.
Sure.
And I think we did for a while, right?
Oh, long before, literally in the early teens, it started as a broker call.
Right.
Thursday afternoons, and I'd literally dial in, and then people would be, when they still had broker dealers, they would jump on the call, and I was with an IR firm that did that a lot, and I'd join, and I'd give the stuff that was going on, and boom. It was, of course, when COVID hit that we started upgrading to Zoom, and the production values of some of the early ones are truly interesting. Let's put it that way.
They're gems. But my I say that to say that you guys have been creating consistent content for so long, and especially in the past 3 to 4 months, we've been making massive strides in just creating more visibility for everything that we're doing. And going to an event like LD Micro, even if it's not necessarily our investor audience today, it's still an opportunity for us to get, you and Ken together, to get some really good video, to continue to put the message out there and to raise more awareness. And I'm so proud of the fact that if you go to or any of the OriginClear, socials, or even the website, and you go to the Water on Demand socials, there's things that exist. There is a Water on Demand YouTube. Kevin, who is our silent hero on this call every week, Kevin Pruitt, he's been doing painstaking work of getting videos and putting it over onto the Water on Demand YouTube channel, and soon, the Rumble channel that we're going to create for Water on Demand as well, just to make sure that we have these entities leading up, to this march to NASDAQ. And it's so crucial that when we talk about people and when we get in front of people and when people discover us, that they're able to go to any of our other properties and see that we're alive. Not only are we live, we're putting out massive quality content constantly. Right? We're in the discussion constantly. And that's such a big deal to be able to have this understanding of not necessarily legitimacy, but its credibility. When people get to go back and see, look, I've been talking about this thing for years and years and years and years and years. Like, you can go back and say, right, it's vindication, Riggs. I was talking about this in 2016, and now you're talking about it today, right? And I could point to the article that I wrote about it, damn it. Like that's the actual...
In my day, we actually had details in our articles.
Right? We had these things called citations, right? We had sources that you didn't just make up and make whatever. But anyway, but I say all that to say, it's awesome to be able to take advantage of opportunities like LD Micro, even if they're not necessarily audience, because it still continues to get us out there and get the message out there. And with everything that has been making, Hrvoje said it perfectly, right? You guys have been busy. There's been a lot going on. You guys are making great strides. The amount that you guys have been able to accomplish, and since I've come on board, what we've been able to accomplish on so many fronts is so massive.
Well, I couldn't leave my desk today. Thank you, AJ. I had to tell a guy to hold while I went to the bathroom. Thank you very much for that.
Listen, I happen to be slightly on-call tech support for more production value.
That's true. I was yelling for you to fix my camera. So one thing I will say, AJ, do you remember what I said to you when I first kind of brought you in? What did I say? Do whatever you have to do. Get in the room. I didn't use those exact words. I had some, New York
wonderful
to those.
Yes.
But get in the blanking room. That's really what we're doing now. We're getting in the room. We're making sure through force of our will, because we survived. Riggs and I survived the early days. It was like two gunslingers back to back, just popping off shots, when this thing was really wild. And we've become so damn close to civilized, it's frightening, right? But this was it was the Wild West. But what we did was we would tell what we were doing to anybody who would listen. Right. And sure enough, just through the course of time and force of will, it was like the curve bent and people not only understood, but said, I've been thinking about that. So, and Riggs and I have joked about it, we weren't wrong. We were just really early, right? We were really early.
So I'm just going to show you January 16th. There it is. 2020.
Is that right? Is that the first one?
That was the first video one, the first one. And literally I cobbled it together. I had no background, nothing.
That looks like a hostage video from like Al Qaeda.
It's proof of life.
He holds up a newspaper from today.
I'm going to go ahead and start to share
I love it.
Let's see. Share. Let me think. Share.
Same glasses? Is those the same glasses?
Same. Yeah. Just shitty lighting and
screen. And we'll get into.
That's the thing, though, is it's cool to be able to see where you've come, but that's also the power of persistence. It's just continuing to stick with it, and it can't be understated. It really can't. I was showing Riggs earlier today. Hopefully, I can show some more designs in the coming weeks of kind of where we've gotten to with the Water on Demand website redesign and how all that's shaping up. And and the presentation on that is going to be phenomenal. It's going to tell the story in as simply a way as our new messaging can, in some really powerful animations. I'm really excited. It's going to be first class sites. When people go to it, they have absolutely just go, wow, this is pretty cool. Right. And they're going to get it. And that's going to be phenomenal. So much stuff going on. But I have to make a personal request, and that's for you to fill out your freaking survey, if I may. And if you would love to talk to Ken,
fill out the blanket survey.
Why you would.
Fill out the survey. Fill out your
survey. And because I do read the feedback and I do appreciate it. And I know a lot of you guys, and I know, again, I even got emails on some contact stuff I got to follow up on from you guys. And that's fine too. If you guys want to reach out to me, I'm totally okay with that. It's been a crazy week, so forgive me on that one. But, fill out the survey. I read the feedback. And if you want to talk with Ken, his calendar is filling up rapidly. We are almost 2 weeks out to be able to just get on the calendar. So if you'd like to talk to Ken and make sure you're taking advantage of all these opportunities, please, please, please fill out the survey. There's a spot in there for you to be able to say, yes, I'd love to talk to Ken, and you can get on his calendar right there. And that would be the best.
But this is where I'm going to begin to assert myself. Prior to our call, there's a wealth of good information that will rapidly catch you up to our current right now positioning. There's so much information. I can speak fast, but I can't speak that fast. This will help to really download us, for you and I to do a bit of a mind meld with, kind of in the minds of Riggs and AJ and Ken as to where we currently are. So when you get on the call, it will really be, okay, here, I now know what I didn't know, and now I know what I need to know. It will dramatically shorten the amount of introduction. It'll be a much more efficient communication.
That's very true, and strongly recommended to keep Ken's sanity. Paul Fetcher says, a plumber visits an attorney's house and charges $600 for an hour's work. The attorney is outraged. I'm an attorney, and I only get $350 per hour. The plumber replies, yep, that's all I earned when I was an attorney. Ba-da-boom.
That's a good one.
Ron Williams, honestly, I don't know of any other CEO that holds a weekly webinar. Thank you. Hats off to you, gentlemen. And Paul Fetcher says, it's not so old that Riggs had hair. And that is true, even though, the lighting's better. So actually, I don't look older, but because that was really a prison, that video with the weird.
You had the newspaper. You holding up the newspaper, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. But anyway, so Keith says, way to go, AJ. He's the man. So anyway, thank you all. It's been slightly longer than usual, but I think entertaining because, of course, we have got to learn how to start shouting, because I think it'll be really interesting then. And we can virtually throw things at each other.
Yeah, I'll turn down the gain on my mic so we don't blow anything up.
There you go. Yeah, Ron, I did get your email. I will be reaching out to you here in a little bit. We can set up a time to chat.
Okay, with that, thank you, everyone. Stay tuned. Many more announcements coming. We are so backlogged. There's a Regulation A, the LD Micro one, of course. There's a major partnership that is the pilot, the first full-scale pilot of True Water on Demand. You're going to be very excited about that. And there's also a deal with a major software provider for the actual.
That's all in our announcements queue.
It is cute. It's actually
time that was a year's worth of news.
Well, no, we had lots of announcements, but they had less meat. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
anyway,
that's true. They were less impactful, correct? Lots to talk about, but shorter topics.
We're chattery for sure. Anyway, It's amazing to have so much meat to talk about. Yes, AJ.
I have one more little tease. Everyone that has been coming to the briefing for a while knows that we typically have a Friday replay email that goes out. Tomorrow, keep your eyes open on your inboxes because that is going to change to the OriginClear weekly update. That is going to have a lot more stuff in it. It's going to have a beautiful new format to it. So make sure you guys are checking that out as well. Don't miss out on your inbox on that one.
The marketing team does not sleep.
We like to do cool stuff. It's fun.
No, that rocks. Well, thank you, AJ. Ken, you guys are doing an amazing job in your respective departments. So excited. We have so much solid news happening. I can't get into the S4, but things are moving on track.
Paul Kalra, he looks better because he's less stressed. He says, you look better than in 2016. I said, trust me, he's much less stressed in 2016 than in 2016.
That was 2020. That was
2020, right. I'm sorry, right.
January 16, 2020.
Much less stressed than in 2022, I can say.
2020, we were like, what's going on in the world?
I had brown hair. It was all brown. So,
wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ken gave his best to this cause, so we better deliver for him.
Yes, right, Ken. All right.
Have a good night.
Live long and prosper.
There you go.